Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to my podcast, The Devil and the Deep Blue Me, and I am your host, Rich Bruck. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. Very, very glad you could make it. And I do hope everyone is enjoying life and being the best that they can be with whatever your chosen path has brought you. So far we've been deep in the relationship trenches lately, from choosing battles to letting friends fade. And this week we're going to dive into another universal truth about being close to another human. Stubbornness. Specifically, love in the time of stubbornness. And, if I had $1 for every time my younger self, and unfortunately even my current self at times, of which I still battle, insisted he was right about something only to discover later on that he was spectacularly wrong. Well, let's just say I certainly wouldn't need to worry about money, ever, for generations to come. So I had this little discussion with a friend of mine just the other day, and it was about something truly inconsequential, something absolutely ridiculous, like whether you should put the milk back in the fridge with the cap facing the front or the back, or how to load a dishwasher again. Yeah, I know. I really need to get over that one. But it was, I don't even remember, something along those lines. In other words, of absolutely no significance one way or another. Anyway, it quickly escalated, not into a screaming match per se, but into the subtle passive-aggressive dance where both parties are just digging in, refusing to concede. And, I could feel myself doing it, planting my feet, ready to defend my milk cap methodology to the very bitter end. And it was absurd, actually very utterly draining. And then in the middle of it, I had this flash of memory, like a little alarm bell ringing in my head. This wasn't the first time. This was a pattern I've lived through so many times in so many different relationships for so many years. The stubbornness, the need to be right, the refusal to just let it go. And what I realized, looking back at that moment, was how much time and energy I've wasted on these pointless hills, all in the name of what? Ego? Control? This misguided belief that if I won this tiny battle, I'd somehow prove myself, something important. I don't know. It's funny when you're younger. Stubbornness feels like a strength. It's conviction. It's standing your ground. But as you get older, you start to see that, there's a hidden cost. The little cracks it puts in relationships, the resentment that builds. And you start to wonder if being right is really worth the emotional toll. Because it turns out, often, very often, it's not. And that's what we're talking about today, the lessons learned about stubbornness in our closest relationships. My younger self was a champion, stubborn mule, seriously, especially in relationships, both romantic and even with friends and bandmates. I had my ideas, my way of doing things, and I clung to them with a death grip. And if someone disagreed, well, I was ready to articulate my position with a fervor usually reserved for theological debates, whether it was about song arrangements, band dynamics, or even navigating personal lives within the confines of a touring van. My conviction was often mistaken for a refusal to see another point of view. I remember one specific situation with an old bandmate, and we were working on a song, and I had a very strong idea for the bridge part or something. It doesn't even matter. And of course, he had a completely different one. And for days, even weeks, we would just butt heads. Neither of us would budge. It wasn't even about the notes. It became about whose vision was better, whose authority was more valid. And the tension in the rehearsal space, man, it was thick thick enough to cut with a pick. And looking back, we probably came up with 5 equally good ideas. But the stubbornness, the need to win that specific battle completely overshadowed the whole creative process. Eventually, one of us, probably me, reluctantly and probably passively aggressively gave in, but the residual frustration, it lingered to the point where it's still on my mind now after all this time. And what I wish I knew then was how much creative energy was, wasted on that little tug of war, instead of just trying both sides or even finding a third, better one altogether. But here's the thing that took me years to understand. Beneath all that stubbornness, beneath that desperate need to be right, was actually a deep tenderness, a vulnerability. I certainly couldn't name it back then, but when I look back at the younger version of myself, digging in his heels over, a bridge arrangement or the proper way to pack equipment, I see someone who is terrified of being dismissed or having his voice not matter. The stubbornness wasn't really about being right. It was about being seen and being valued and being worthy of consideration. And I think that's what makes stubbornness so heartbreaking, really. It's love turned inside out. It's caring so much about connection that you end up pushing people away in your desperation to matter to them. When I was arguing with my bandmate, I wasn't just defending a musical idea. I was defending my place in the creative process, my worth as a collaborator, my right to be heard. And he was probably doing the exact same thing. And the tragedy is that we were both trying to protect something precious, our creative spirits, our sense of belonging, but we were doing it in a way that made genuine intimacy, impossible. Real intimacy requires the kind of openness that stubbornness actively resists. It requires showing up without armor, admitting when you're wrong, and trusting that the people who love you will see you as valuable even when you're not perfect. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self that the very qualities that made him worth listening to, his passion, his creativity, his deep caring about the music, those weren't things that could be taken away by admitting he might be wrong about a bridge arrangement, that his bandmate's different idea wasn't a threat to his identity. It was actually an invitation to create something that neither of us could have imagined all alone. The lesson I've learned, slowly and painfully, and probably still learning, is that stubbornness is often just fear in disguise. It's fear of being wrong, fear of losing control, fear of looking weak, fear of compromising your identity. But the irony is, in trying so hard to protect yourself, you end up pushing away the very people who love you. Because love, true connection, thrives on compromise. It thrives on empathy. And, of course, the willingness to meet someone in the middle. Even if it means letting go of your rightness on something very trivial. I even see this with my students sometimes. They'll come in and clearly not for a musical lesson, but to vent about a parent, about a sibling or a partner, about some silly argument that they're stuck in. And it's never about the actual thing that they're arguing about. It's always about the principle. And I'm sitting there listening and I see my younger self so very clearly. And what I try to convey to them, without giving direct advice, is that some battles just aren't meant to be won. They're meant to be transcended. You don't have to concede defeat. You just have to choose peace over pride. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say, you know what? Maybe you do have a point. Let's just agree to disagree. Want to go get some pizza? But what breaks my heart now is thinking about all the moments of potential tenderness I missed because I was too busy being right. The times when someone I cared about was reaching out, maybe clumsily, maybe through disagreement, and instead of meeting them with curiosity and compassion, I met them with defensive walls. How many conversations could have become connections if I'd just taken a breath and asked, what are you really trying to tell me? Instead of preparing my rebuttal. There's something almost sacred about the moment when you realize you've been wrong about something. Not just factually wrong, but wrong in your approach, wrong in your assumptions about what really matters. It's humbling, but it's also profoundly humanizing. It reminds you that you're not the sole keeper of truth, that other people's perspectives aren't threats to your existence, but gifts that can expand your understanding of the world. I think about the relationships I've damaged over the years with my stubborn insistence on being right. And I feel such tenderness for everyone involved, for the younger me who didn't know how to be vulnerable, and for the people who loved me enough to keep trying to reach me even when I was being impossible. Some of those relationships, they didn't survive my learning curve, and that's a grief I carry, but the ones that did, I hope they're stronger now, deeper and more real, because we learned how to fight about things that actually matter and let go of the things that don't. What I wish I knew then was that admitting you might be wrong, or even just acknowledging another valid perspective, it isn't weakness. It's actually a profound strength. It's a sign of maturity, of humility, and of a greater commitment to the relationship than to your own ego. It allows for genuine connections to flourish when stubbornness would have, it would have just built a wall. And honestly, it feels a whole lot better to be connected than to be right all the time. All right, so it's time now for a little enrichment. Speaking of digging in your heels and stubbornly refusing to move, let's learn some things that might just make you scratch your head. So, did you know that the average person walks the equivalent of 3 times around the world in their lifetime? So, imagine if we applied that same stubborn persistence to compromise instead of arguments. I know I would certainly have the legs of an all-time champion runner, that's for sure. The smallest country in the world is Vatican City. It's so tiny, you could probably cross it in about 20 minutes. If, of course, you weren't too stubborn about finding the exact perfect walking pace. A buttload. A buttload is an actual unit of measurement. It's a real term for a large cask, usually holding 126 gallons of wine. So, next time you're stuck in a stubborn argument, remember, you might just be arguing over a whole buttload of nothing. The shortest ever recorded complete song is You Suffer by Napalm Death, clocking in at just 1.31 seconds. Wow. Perfect for when you're so stubbornly angry you can only express yourself in a blink and a miss sort of burst of sound. And definitely still way shorter than my last argument about the damn milk cap. See, sometimes stubbornness can lead to fascinating facts or really short songs, or extremely long, exhausting, and truly, utterly pointless arguments. And again, the choice is always yours. All right, and finally, a little bit of a music check-in, little music check-in of the week. This week I've been wrestling with a new song that has this push and pull dynamic to it. It's got a bit of a bluesy, almost argumentative feel in the verse, but then the chorus opens up into this really resolved, almost hopeful pop-type melody. It's like the musical embodiment of stubbornness and then ultimately compromise. It's got that kind of rock energy through the whole song, which feels right with the tension. But the release in the chorus is what I'm really enjoying. I'm thinking of calling it the grind and the give, or something like that. And besides, I do like a subtle metaphor too, which you may have noticed from any of my other stuff, if of course you have been curious enough to go in and check things out. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely still in its early stages, but that push and pull is something I've explored a lot in my songwriting, particularly when I'm seeking something aggressive. It's funny how sometimes the arguments lead to the most interesting creative solutions, if of course you can just get out of your own way. And again, speaking of things I'm working on, you can always check out more of my music anytime you see fit or are in the mood for something new, something different, and something absolutely exciting on any of your preferred streaming platforms. I do believe I'm on all of them. And naturally, anytime you want to save and follow or subscribe, I would be honored and certainly grateful if you did. So then, love in the time of stubbornness. The big realization for me was that being right almost never feels as good as being connected on any level to any person in any situation. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just to let go of your ego, just to let go of your grip on some petty point and choose the relationship instead. That's a wish I knew that would have saved me a lot of headaches and certainly a lot of heartaches along the way. All right, well, that's it for episode 7, friends. And once again, I do truly thank you so very much for joining me. And remember, I'm human. I'm real. I live and I breathe just like you. So your messages and your support, your real life connection really does mean so much to me. So please keep them coming. I absolutely love them. And you can always reach me at Rich Bruck or The Deep Blue Me on this very platform that you're listening to me on right now, and most of the others as well. And next time, I'll be back to talk about something as equally challenging as the fight to overcome stubbornness with the myth of effortless success. Because let's be honest, nothing worth having ever comes easy. And most especially, not in music. But until then, choose peace over pride, and maybe, just maybe, try putting the milk in backwards just once and see what happens. But until the next time we meet, please have yourself a safe and happy week.